There comes a moment, quiet, almost hidden, when a woman stops reaching for a man, and without warning, the entire dynamic shifts. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not a punishment. It's simply the moment her soul whispers, enough. And that whisper, though soft, has the power to shake a man far more deeply than any confrontation ever could. Because when a woman stops looking for him, she's not choosing silence. She's choosing herself. This is the moment most men don't see coming. They get used to her presence, her good morning texts, her gentle reminders, her willingness to hold the emotional weight of the connection. She becomes a rhythm in his life, a heartbeat in the background he never has to search for. And human nature, as Carl Jung understood deeply, always undervalues what feels guaranteed. What is ever present becomes invisible, not out of malice, but out of habit. Comfort turns into complacency. But when she steps back, when she stops appearing in his notifications, when her name no longer lights up his phone, something unsettling awakens inside him. The human mind is terrified of empty spaces. Silence forces reflection. Distance forces awareness. And suddenly, the man who never had to wonder begins to question everything. Why isn't she texting me? Did she lose interest? Did someone else take my place? Has she finally realized she deserves better? He feels the shift, not because she is punishing him, but because she has stopped operating from need. And a woman who no longer needs is a woman who suddenly becomes unforgettable. But here's the truth. Most women never realize the real transformation isn't happening inside him. It's happening inside her. Because when she stops looking for him, she's not abandoning love. She's abandoning self-neglect. She is no longer pouring energy into a place that drains her. She is no longer trying to prove her worth in a space that refuses to recognize it. This is not a tactic. This is not a test. This is a reclamation. A woman's detachment is not a strategy. It is a revelation. A revelation that her attention, her presence, her vulnerability, her time have value. And once she sees that value clearly, everything begins to reorder itself. Like Daniela, who spent months chasing a man who offered crumbs while she handed him a feast. Always responding quickly, always staying available, always interpreting his silence as something she needed to correct. She became predictable, dependable, safe, and therefore taken for granted. Until one morning, without anger or resentment, she simply stopped. She didn't announce it. She just breathed for herself again. At first, her mind panicked. The urge to reach out felt like withdrawal from a drug she had convinced herself she needed. But she held the line, and the magic of detachment unfolded, not because he came back, but because she did. Ironically, that's when he began showing up, noticing her more, reacting to her posts, asking about her. But the strange and beautiful truth was that Daniela no longer cared in the same way. She wasn't waiting anymore. She wasn't hoping to be chosen. She wasn't asking the universe for a sign, because she had already chosen herself. And that is the paradox that Jung's teachings often point to. Once a woman stops needing, she becomes magnetic, not because she's withholding anything, but because she's finally aligned with her own center. She emits the kind of energy that says, I'm not chasing anything, I'm becoming something. Men feel that shift, even the emotionally clueless ones, because absence is never empty. It's full of meaning. Monica discovered this too. She used to respond instantly, rearrange her plans to fit his, and constantly give pieces of herself to maintain a connection he barely nurtured. He enjoyed the attention, but he never valued the giver. Until she decided to redirect her energy back into her life, her body, her projects, her dreams. She didn't become distant out of spite. She simply became occupied with her own expansion. And suddenly, her silence grew louder than any words she had ever spoken. Her absence became a presence he couldn't escape. Her indifference became a mirror, reflecting his neglect. But here's what truly matters. She wasn't living to provoke him anymore. She was living to become herself again. And that is the energy Heartsync X is built upon. The energy of women reclaiming their emotional power, not by force, not by games, but by remembering who they were before they handed parts of themselves to people who never earned them. Because when a woman stops looking for a man, the world doesn't fall apart. It opens. She begins to see her life through clearer eyes. Her phone stops controlling her mood. Her self-worth stops being tied to a reply. Her attention becomes a sacred currency instead of a free giveaway. Her energy shifts from chasing someone to building something, and when she reaches that state, calm, grounded, centered, she becomes a different kind of presence. She becomes a woman with direction, and a woman with direction is impossible to ignore. Jung believed that true power comes from withdrawing energy from what diminishes the self and redirecting it into what strengthens it. This is exactly what happens when she stops looking for him. Her sense of identity solidifies, her emotional landscape stabilizes, and something inside her straightens its spine. She stops reacting and begins choosing. Her peace no longer sits in someone else's hands. Her value is no longer measured by someone else's attention. Her self-respect becomes non-negotiable. And ironically, it is in that state, when she no longer needs to be missed, that she becomes unforgettable. A man may never admit it out loud, but when a woman who once gave him consistency suddenly withdraws, a subtle panic begins to take root inside him. It's not dramatic. It's not immediate. It grows slowly, like a shadow stretching across the floor at sunset. Silent, but impossible to ignore. Because when you remove your presence, you remove his comfort. And comfort, once gone, reveals everything that was previously overlooked. This is where the psychology becomes fascinating. The mind hates unanswered questions. It hates unfinished stories. It hates missing pieces. And when you stop looking for him, you become an unfinished story he can't fully close. He may try to act indifferent. He may pretend he doesn't notice. But behind that performance, uncertainty begins to whisper. Did she lose interest? Was I not enough? Did she finally see what I was too blind to appreciate? Why is she so calm? Did someone else take my place? That whisper slowly becomes an echo. And that echo, if he ever cared at all, turns into discomfort. The same silence he once used against you becomes the silence that confronts him. Suddenly, the emotional freedom he took for granted feels like a loss. But while he's wrestling with uncertainty, something much more powerful is unfolding inside you. Detachment has sharpened your awareness. Absence has returned your vision. Silence has given you your voice back. And this is where the woman transforms, not into someone colder, but into someone clearer. She begins to recognize the difference between wanting someone and abandoning herself for them. She begins to see that love without reciprocity is not devotion, it's self-erasure. You begin to see yourself with new honesty. You start asking deeper questions. Was he truly giving, or was I carrying both sides of the connection? Was I trying to be chosen or trying not to be abandoned? Was I loving him, or was I chasing the version of him I created in my mind? These questions don't weaken you. They free you. Because clarity is the first step toward emotional liberation, and liberation is what makes you magnetic. Men feel this shift. They feel when your energy is no longer orbiting around them. They feel when your emotional airspace is no longer filled with their importance. They feel the absence of your attention, the way a room feels the absence of light. They may not say it, but they feel it. This is why your withdrawal creates more impact than any speech you could ever give. Words can be dismissed. Explanations can be argued, but silence, steady, grounded silence, cannot be debated. It can only be felt. Many women underestimate the psychological weight of their own absence. They think disappearing means they will be forgotten. They fear that stepping back will erase them. But what they fail to see is this: presence does not create value. Quality does. Availability does not create desire. Scarcity does. Insistence does not create connection. Respect does. A woman who gives endlessly becomes invisible. A woman who gives selectively becomes unforgettable. This is not manipulation. This is human nature. Even Jung said, "What you withdraw from grows in psychological power." Your detachment makes your essence feel rarer, and therefore more meaningful. Not because you're playing games, but because you're no longer displaying yourself in a marketplace where you were never meant to compete. Imagine a man walking into a room filled with noise. He hears everything, but listens to nothing. Then, suddenly, the noise stops. The silence is jarring, unsettling, impossible to ignore. Your absence works the same way. You once filled emotional spaces he didn't even realize were empty. When that disappears, he finally notices the gap. Meanwhile, you are evolving in ways he cannot see. You are rebuilding the parts of you that dimmed every time you waited for a reply. You are reclaiming the time you spent overthinking his mixed signals. You are rediscovering the woman you were before your heart began orbiting around someone who didn't meet you halfway. And as you grow, your energy shifts from anxious to grounded, from reactive to centered, from dependent to sovereign. This is why the most powerful transformation happens quietly, internally, and often invisible to the person who once held your attention. They only see the result, not the rebuilding. They see the confidence, not the struggle. They see the glow, not the healing. And by the time he notices, you're no longer the woman he remembers. You're no longer the one waiting, hoping, adjusting, shrinking, checking your phone in the middle of the night. You are steady. You are present. You are occupied with your own life. And that is exactly when he begins to feel the contrast. Because the moment you stop looking for him, he finally starts seeing you. Some men react quickly, reaching out with sudden enthusiasm. Others move slower, testing your boundaries, sensing the shift, but not understanding it. And some don't move at all, not because you're forgettable, but because they were never emotionally equipped to appreciate someone of your depth. And this is where a deeper truth emerges. His reaction is not your measurement. Your growth is. You are not detaching to be chased. You are detaching because your soul is tired of chasing anyone but yourself. This is the transition from emotional dependency to emotional sovereignty, from longing to self-respect, from waiting to choosing. And as you step into this new version of yourself, something beautiful begins to happen. You stop wondering what he feels, because you're too busy noticing what you feel. The anxiety fades. The self-doubt quiets. The confusion clears. Your spirit exhales. You begin to live not from lack, but from fullness. You engage with people who reciprocate, not just consume. You invest in connections that feel mutual, not draining. You choose experiences that expand you, not shrink you. You create a life that continues whether he stays or goes. And this is exactly why your withdrawal becomes so powerful? Because it comes from growth, not resentment, from clarity, not bitterness, from strength, not fear. A man can sense the difference between a woman who disappears to manipulate him and a woman who disappears because she finally understands her worth. One is a tactic, the other is transformation, and transformation is irresistible. There is a moment, quiet, powerful, undeniable, when a woman finally realizes she has nothing left to chase. Not because she's given up, not because she's angry, but because something inside her has awakened, something ancient, something wise, something that whispers, your soul was never meant to beg. And that awakening marks the end of one chapter, and the beginning of the most transformative one. Because the real question is not, what does a man feel when you stop looking for him? The real question is, what do you become when you stop looking for him? For the first time in a long time, you begin to move without hesitation. You begin to breathe without waiting. You begin to build without asking for permission. Your life stops orbiting around uncertainty. Your heart stops bending to fit someone's emotional laziness. Your worth stops being negotiated in the silence between his replies. And as you rise into this new version of yourself, the emotional architecture of your world changes in ways he cannot understand and in ways you cannot ignore. Because when a woman stops looking for a man, her energy stops leaking. She pulls it back, slowly, steadily, intentionally. She reinvests it into the places she abandoned, her passions, her goals, her friendships, her body, her dreams. She no longer waits for someone to choose her. She chooses herself every morning. And this kind of self-investment creates a glow that no makeup can replicate. It creates a confidence that no validation can match. It creates a magnetism that no strategy can manufacture. A woman who moves from need to abundance steps into a different league entirely. Not above him, but beyond him. She no longer hopes he sees her worth. She embodies it. She no longer waits for him to match her energy. She directs her energy where it's received. And in that shift, something remarkable happens. Her emotional world stops, depending on the behavior of someone else. This is emotional sovereignty, the place where your spirit stands tall, without leaning on someone's inconsistency for balance. And once you reach that state, you begin to understand a truth that once felt cruel, but now feels liberating. If he wanted to, he would. If he valued you, he'd show it. If he cared deeply, you wouldn't have to remind him. But instead of breaking you, this truth frees you. Because you no longer make excuses for someone who doesn't show up. You no longer cling to potential instead of reality. You no longer confuse emotional hunger with emotional connection. You begin to see that love is not proven through pursuit. It's proven through presence. And when that clarity lands in your heart, even quietly, it shifts your entire identity. You no longer awaken with anxiety. You no longer check your phone with hope. You no longer replay the same scenarios in your mind. You begin to live, not half alive, waiting for him, but fully alive, moving for you. And here is the beautiful irony. The more you come home to yourself, the more the world begins to respond to you differently. People sense your groundedness. They sense your standards. They sense your emotional spine, because a woman who respects herself teaches others how to treat her without ever speaking a word. Her energy communicates it. Her presence enforces it. Her silence confirms it. And this is the moment, this quiet, powerful moment, when the man you stopped looking for begins to feel the consequence of his own indifference. For some men, it comes like a whisper. She's different now. For others, it feels like a sudden realization. She's no longer mine to take for granted. And for a few, it strikes like a loss. I didn't know she was the one until she stopped trying. But no matter how he feels, the truth remains. Your life is not paused waiting for his clarity. Your self-worth is not on trial awaiting his verdict. Your future is not delayed while he decides what he wants. You are moving. You are growing. You are becoming. And the woman you're becoming has little interest in going back to the version of herself who waited, hoped, tolerated, adjusted, minimized, or forgot her own worth in the process. Because the more you rise, the more you realize you weren't afraid of losing him. You were afraid of losing yourself. And now that you've chosen you, you're untouchable, not in a cold or guarded way, but in a way that says, I decide who receives my energy. I decide who enters my world. I decide whose hands my heart belongs in. Because your peace, after everything you've survived, is no longer up for negotiation. Your self-worth, after everything you've learned, is no longer something you outsource. Your heart, after everything you've rebuilt, is no longer something you give to someone who isn't ready to hold it. And this is why, in the end, the most important thing isn't whether he misses you, regrets losing you, or returns wanting another chance. The most important thing is that you've reached the place where you no longer need him to, because a woman who rises from emotional dependence to emotional freedom becomes someone extraordinary, someone rare in a world full of noise, confusion, and insecurity. She becomes a woman of presence, of depth, of calm, of purpose. And that is the kind of woman who doesn't chase. She attracts, not through scarcity, not through silence, not through strategy, but through alignment, clarity, and self-respect. So if you've stopped looking for him, whatever he feels, panic, curiosity, regret, nothing at all, none of it defines you. What defines you is who you become next. Your rise, your healing, your awakening, your softness returning, not for him, but for yourself. Your standards strengthening, not as walls, but as doors that only open for the right soul. Your heart expanding, not to beg, but to choose. And if you're reading this right now, let this be your reminder. You are not falling behind. You are not losing anything. You are not being forgotten. You are being reborn. This is your new beginning. Step into it with grace. Step into it with courage. Step into it with the quiet confidence of a woman who finally remembers who she is. Because the day you stop looking for him is the day you start finding yourself. If this message touched something deep inside you, if you felt seen, understood, or comforted, then don't walk this journey alone. Heartsync X is a space built for women rising into their power with clarity, elegance, and emotional depth. Share your experience in the comments. Tell us where you are on this journey. Your story could be the light another woman needs tonight. And if you want more content that helps you master your energy, rebuild your strength, understand masculine psychology, and step into a higher version of yourself, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and watch the next video waiting for you on the channel. I promise it will shift something inside you, just like this one did.